Hi everybody, welcome back to the Dr. Boz Channel. This channel is usually filled with lots of information about the ketogenic diet and how to improve your health through that diet. Tonight we're going to take a little bit different approach and I'm going to explain this goofy thing I have wearing on my head. So I'm going to give you a little background about where my passion comes from when it comes to really addressing chronic health issues. And that's far in my history where I was trying to figure out what kind of doctor I wanted to be. And one of the places I was very attracted to was the intensive care unit, or ICU. And in that arena, we had the opportunity to spend a lot of time studying the brain, how it's healed, and there was a very special attention put towards sleep. I put a lot of slave labor into understanding the sleep lab and really, honing in how to trace the information coming from your brain when you're sleeping, and how much that correlated to improving the health of somebody that's really sick in the ICU. Now, I didn't end up in that world, but I am thankfully enjoying the world of being an internal medicine physician. And boy, I can't tell you how many times that information about sleep and repairing the brain has come back to help my patients and my practice. So tonight, I'm going to address an issue that has been very much talked about in the last several months, and I've kind of tried to answer some of the questions piecemeal, but this episode is specifically addressing those of you that have written in and asked questions about one of the patients that I consulted on this channel where he really struggled with a sleep problem. I'm going to briefly outline his history, give you an update on Lachlan, and then we're going to come back to what is this thing on my head. So the patient's name was John, and if you look in the show notes, I'll link you to the blog article that I wrote about it. I then ended up doing a very special blog article sharing the protocol that I use for my patients, and his story unfolds in several episodes on this show. So he's a police officer and had a severe accident. It wasn't the first time he'd been injured, and in his accident, John really had some struggles with pain, had some surgeries. In his mending, he still ended up feeling like the pain medications were kind of slowing his mind down, and then he felt like maybe he was getting too used to them, so he said, I just need to stop these. Unfortunately, when he stopped them, he found that the pain was still so significant that he couldn't fall asleep at night. This led to using a tried and true solution of mankind, which was alcohol. And he'd have some alcohol, it'd shut his brain off at night, and boy, that would get him through those first few weeks when he was off of those those strong pain medications. Unfortunately, he found that he couldn't really get away from using the alcohol or he wouldn't be able to fall asleep. That's when I consulted him, and he was actually starting the ketogenic diet. We were talking about how important the healing of those nerves that were conducting the pain, how powerful it is when the body's anti-inflammatory processes are down, and that the pain medicines, although they did a great job of controlling his pain at first, they really they altered his sleep cycle. And that led to these less than ideal cycles of sleep where he just couldn't really shut his mind off to heal during his sleep. He didn't know this was happening, as do most of my patients don't understand that when they're using these strong pain medications or alcohol at night, that their brain doesn't sink into as deep of a sleep, and this really prevents their long-term healing. So he had reached out to me, and he had gotten to a place where I asked him to limit his calories for several hours before he went to bed. And actually the calories weren't a problem as long as we didn't count alcohol. And, that touched on this problem at first, and then he tried to give up the alcohol at night. He then tried to take it like at 7 o'clock, but he's like, Doc, I take the alcohol to shut off my brain. So at 7 o'clock, I don't go to bed for a couple hours. It's really not working. And that's when I really said, we need to address this. You've gotten 7, 8, 9 months into a habit of using the pain medications, and then when you saw those being dangerous, he then used alcohol. And although he wasn't in a severe problem, and I wouldn't have considered him an alcoholic, you could see a habit that he was using the tools he had at hand to shut off a problem. But what we really needed to address was his sleep. So his wife and I consulted, and we set up a protocol. He was my patient. This wasn't advice through the internet. This was actually, he was my patient, and we prescribed a sleep protocol for which I've used many times in my career. And the foundation for that protocol came from being part of that ICU team and knowing that the depth of your sleep is super important for healing your body. And specifically in his case, this was a pain syndrome. But he knew he didn't sleep well. He knew he was kind of juggling a few tricks to get his brain to shut down. And he was having troubles. Just his energy was down. He realized that this was weird, that his body wasn't healing as well as it should have. And we talked about the improved nutrients on a ketogenic diet and the repair of those nerves on a ketogenic diet. But that only happens when you get the inflammation out of your system, and that allows the body to heal as long as you're still getting your sleep. So sleep became the core center around his treatment program. He then checked in 2 or 3 weeks after that, and then about 4 or 5 weeks later, and we followed his pain syndrome. The protocol for using to reset sleep, and I use this a lot in the patients who come with a heavy addiction to opiates, or find an addiction, heroin, Suboxone. When we're trying to reset sleep, it's very powerful to shut the brain down to a level where then it can kind of start to wake up and use the pathways for sleep that it was designed to use but maybe hasn't been to in a while because of these poor sleep habits. So the protocol starts with a really heavy sedation of a medication that's not very fun to talk about because it's got it's just a medication that takes explanation, and you need to sit still with your doctor and hear about it. So I didn't mention the medication, and I won't mention it here. It is talked about in the blog article, but there's where all the rules are gone through about what I tell my patients. So John's sleep improved amazingly. He did really well, and in part because he was already in a ketogenic state. So I didn't have a lot of inflammation to fight in his situation, and his habit was really tiny. It wasn't 20 years of this problem, or even a couple years. He was really new into this trouble of having a poor sleep cycle. And we really shut down his brain. We did that 3 nights in a row. Actually, I think it was 4 nights in a row. And boy, by the next week when we interviewed him, he just could not believe how much better his energy was, how much less his pain was. He hadn't, he was still using some of the pain medications, just nothing like he was before. And that week he said, I haven't even used one of them. I just really feel the pain has improved so much. And we talked about, and I talk about this in those blog articles, that pain syndromes, you can really reset it with this protocol. And it's been used by several of my mentors, but also throughout medicine to say, we know that our brains need to sink into this really healthy sleep to heal. And since then, John continues to practice good sleep habits. Really has not ended up anywhere near the pain syndrome he had before. Pain comes and goes, and when he does injure himself or push himself, that pain will come back. But he's got a much deeper sleep habit now than he did before, and that's very much in part to that sleep protocol, but also his ketogenic state, where his brain was just really easy for me to awaken the right parts of it, and then use those medications to help him change that sleep pattern. So that brings me to this thing on my head, but let me give you just a quick, I wanted to give an update on Lachlan. Let's see here, I want to put her Instagram handle up here if I can. There we go. So Lachlan, again, our type 1 diabetic. Again, I really try to put patients on my show as much as possible to tell their stories and their mistakes and their successes, and how we use the ketogenic diet. So Lachlan's story is that she's a type 1 diabetic and was on over 100 units of insulin in early 2019. She's been my patient for 10 years before we started this, and I'm actually the one who put her on the insulin. Now she's seen several doctors since then, but she's 100 pounds heavier than she was when we first diagnosed her with type 1 diabetes. And through the ketogenic diet, we did some amazing things at the beginning. We really tricked her chemistry into waking up and being able to use a ketone before we really changed anything about her diet. We said, nope, I need you to take those ketone salts, that BHB or beta hydroxybutyrate, and I need you to have that every day for 2 weeks before you start letting go of any of those carbs. And like with many people, as she used that ketone supplement, she really had a decrease in her cravings. Her energy got better. Her brain said, she was like, colors came back to life. And really the ability to say no to some things that were pretty habitual in her eating pattern were suddenly much easier after she'd been supplementing with that, those ketones in a can. You can see this is the one that she used, which is, again, this supplement helps support this channel. So those of you that do grab it, I just want to say thank you. I really enjoy this teaching, and it's through some of the book that I wrote, Any Way You Can, the supplements, and the food guide for your fridge, and one for your grocery shopping. Again, those are just a few items that we use to supplement how can we keep doing this and kind of satisfying the hunger of people interested in how to heal themselves without another prescription. So back to Lachlan, she had taken on fasting about 6 or 7 weeks ago now. She had really done well over the ketogenic diet, dropped her insulin by 60%. Her lab results after 3 months on the ketogenic diet went from a hemoglobin A1C of 10, which is an average blood sugar in the 270s, down to an average blood sugar, I think it was 160s that it had come down to. So a dramatic improvement in 3 months. Her A1C, I think, was 8.2. But in the last 2 weeks, she's continued for about 5 weeks now to fast with me every week. So even though this is airing on Sunday, I'll start my fast again on Sunday, and you'll see me post my numbers on Instagram. If you can follow me on Instagram, I am trying to get to 10,000 followers because there's some fun things about sharing my little videos that I can do once I have that many followers. So please go follow me on Instagram. And the fasting that she started, she actually last week, she had made it to 36 hours the previous weeks, and really saw an amazing improvement in her insulin and her blood sugars, and really her confidence to have a type 1 diabetic not eat for 36 hours. In my whole career as an internal medicine, I've never had a diabetic do that. I mean, a type 1 diabetic do that. So she'll start her fast on Sundays with me, and then all day Monday it's salt and water and black coffee only. We do have some tea that I've given her, or that I use. You can see that up there too. I find that it doesn't have any sweetness to it, and it really doesn't break the fast. Black coffee, unsweetened tea, and water are the things that I allow on the strict fast. So we go all day Monday without that. We usually post our numbers on Instagram together. And she got up the next morning and just said, geez, I really feel good. I'm going to keep fasting. And she made it 48 hours of fasting, which is a new record for her. So I just want to give her a thumbs up, because for those of you that have made it past the 24-hour threshold, and then you make it to the 36-hour threshold, and then to accidentally almost get to 48 hours. And she said, if I didn't have a shift working her third job on Monday night or on Tuesday night, she said, I probably would have fasted again, but I was just afraid that what happens if I don't do well and I'm at my job. And so she did eat on Tuesday night, but made it over 48 hours, which is a new record. And again, every time she does that, she empties out more stored sugar in her muscle cells and her liver cells that we put there from having years of too much insulin and only feeding her body on a carb energy as opposed to a fat-fueled energy. All right, so that's an update of Lachlan. I am now going to show you what this thing is on my head. This is a device that really has changed my way of meditating and training my patients to sleep. So this is a MUSE, which is a headband that helps keep track of those sleep waves that I used to track when I was in the ICU studying people's sleep when they were severely ill and severely injured. When you look at the MUSE Headband, we'll go back to those slides in just a minute, but when you look at the MUSE Headband, it is It is a device that when I would hook you up in the ICU, or if you came to the sleep lab where we were studying your sleep for either seizures or sleep apnea, but more likely seizures, where we had lots of little wires hooked up to their head, we could see that their brain would sink into a certain level of sleep. And if they were severely injured, or their brain was swollen, or their brain was damaged, like from a concussion or chronic swelling from some of the chronic illnesses, you would see that the waves in their brain wouldn't sink into that deep sleep that repairs the body. And when I look at most of the people writing in questions about how can I improve my autophagy, how can I improve the healing process in my body, yes, the ketogenic diet does a great job of removing inflammation, but you still need the habits of a good sleep cycle to get your brain to shut down properly. And they're like, well, is there a medicine for that? I'm like, sure, but most people don't need the protocol that I used for John to reset his sleep. What most people need is a tool or some awareness about what happens in their brain when you go to shut it down. So like any skill in life, this is a learned skill. Now, if you look back at the oldest videos I have on this channel, there is one from over 10 years ago. I might be about 10 years ago now. I don't know. So maybe it's 2012, where if you type in Dr. Boz and sleep, it's the oldest video. And it's a lecture that I would make my patients go watch on YouTube and fill out the notes in it, because the rules of sleep were so important for us to heal their body. And it wasn't something I could flash in their minds, or take it pensively from my mind and put it in theirs in an office visit. I really needed them to listen to the science about why their brain needs healthy sleep. And you can go back and listen to that video as well. But the point I'm making is that the skill is learned. One of the things that I find very endearing, and you'll hear me talk about in that video, is my job as a mother, putting up the boundaries for my kids to get healthy sleep and a healthy bedtime. And I would always pit against them that this was for their brain development, and it was my job as their mother to help their brain develop properly. I don't want you in my basement at 30. Now, I didn't really say that, but as they become teenagers, I do think that, going, well, at least they have really wonderfully wired brains for the sleep pattern. So we'll get through the teenage years and know that their brains will be growing quite a bit during these years, and they do that best when the brain sinks into a deep sleep and does that on a patterned basis. And this is a learned skill. Let me say that one more time. You can learn this. I get fingers on a chalkboard for me, or when people come into my clinic and say, I can't sleep. You would die if you can't sleep. What you're really trying to say is that you cannot sink the brain into a restful sleep that repairs and resets your mind. And again, poor sleep is linked to cancer, obesity, heart disease, strokes. The list is incredibly long. That one of the first write-ups I had from a patient complaining about my services was, I was in my first 1 or 2 years of practice, and she came in and wanted to lose weight. And I spent the next 15 minutes reviewing her sleep pattern and telling her about how important the sleep process was and how I'd like to help her reset her sleep. And she walked out and wrote a complaint to the office manager that I came in to talk about weight loss and all she talked about was sleep. And I would contend that that is actually the key to a weight loss program, is that your brain is able to sink into the kind of sleep that can reset and repair your body. And when I see folks stuck in a session of life that is either a plateau on their weight loss, or how can I speed up my autophagy, or how can my body heal from what I've done in the past, whether it's autoimmune or leaky gut or a foggy brain that is working better on a ketogenic diet, but they want to know how can they speed that up. And the next answer is sleep. What I don't want folks asking me for is medication to do that. Instead, I would encourage you to use this device. And let me explain what it does. So there are sensors under the forehead part and behind the ears that connect to my head, and it is intended to help you meditate. Now, if you're like me and ever taken on a meditation cycle, it can be not only intimidating, it's the first time I've tried to meditate. I would close my eyes or follow this guided meditation, and instantly I would think of all the things I need to get done and I would not shut down. My monkey brain would take off and I would put things over here and do this here and don't forget to do that. And I wasn't thinking about my breathing at all. And I'm thinking, this is not meditation. This is just a waste of my time. And I couldn't get myself to be disciplined about practicing slowing down my own mind in order to, practice the things I preach. When this device came out, I was one of the first to say, I totally want that, because it was the clincher for me to use technology to help me sort out, was I really slowing down my mind, practicing that it shuts off. And as a result, when you do that in a wakeful state, when you go to shut your brain off at night, you use those same tools to shut down your mind, and that results in a deeper, heavier sleep. That kind where your body does repair and does undo the habits we've done over the last decades. So MUSE is meant to be a device, and this is where I'll go over and show you a couple of these pictures. So you'll see that the sensors on this, it doesn't really let me point, so let me do this. Let's see. So the sensors on this are, you can see those little rubber parts that go behind your ears, and then if you can see in the back of that headband, right where my forehead is, there's actually kind of metallic type strips that pick up some of the sensors that I would have done if I was studying your brain when you were injured in my ICU back in my training. As you look, though, a couple things where I think are helpful is that first of all, it's your personal assistance, and it's really the same kind of medical processes that we were using in the ICU labs, in the sleep labs, that you can now use in your own home. In fact, in my clinic, what my nurse has done is we will use this device after the patient has checked in, and once they're kind of accustomed to our clinic, while they're waiting after the nurse is done and before I get there, especially if they are struggling with a brain injury or struggling with anxiety or addiction or sleep, we'll have them put this headband on, and they open up the device on their own phone. So if you look here, this is, they'll download the app onto their phone, put their own data in there. I'll never get that information. It's all stored in their phone, but they can use my headband while they sit there and really take 3 to 5 minutes to just slow down their breathing, really settle their mind down, and to watch how their mind, can they control it. I like to call it my monkey brain, because it's about that busy when I get my life going too quick or too fast. When you look at some of the other things, though, is they sync the app with their phone, and then they put headphones in, and a weather pattern will play in their ears that matches what these sensors are telling their brain. So it really is a real-time feedback for them to learn that if they're listening to the windstorm, you can pick like windstorm or rainforest or a rainy setting or a desert. And it's very useful, where as the wind begins to roar or the wind begins to blow loudly in your ears, it's a sign that your brain is really going too fast and you've got lots of scatteredness going on. You've lost your focus. And as you think about breathing and slowing down your mind and really pulling those thoughts, tucking them away, and really practicing doing that. And my favorite part is that as you improve that process and you finally get to the waves in your brain that we're looking for, a bird will chirp. And I don't know if you've ever seen that analogy where if you master your meditation enough, a bird can sit on your shoulder and you will not change anything about what you're doing, that you're in such control of your heart rate, your breathing, that a bird could land on your shoulder and it's not going to change what you're doing. So I don't know if that's what they used to come up with the signal that your brain is really, this is the kind of wave patterns that we want your we want your brain to be doing, and it's a reflection that you've got control, that you really have learned how to put off those noises, take away the chaos, and find that peacefulness inside your own mind. So again, after the sessions, you can look at the score, and that's what I would do when I would come in the room. And you know, in the punchline of why I recommend this, it really is that the sense of teaching yourself, which I hope that's what you see I'm trying to do on this channel, is that yes, I use patient stories, but the goal for these patients is that they do not become addicted to the doctor, that they really find tools that they can use to improve their own health. And I really find that this device is something that after patients have used it, they don't like just practicing once when they come into my office. And so often they'll go out and they'll purchase one. And within weeks of just getting that feedback, what does it feel like to really practice shutting down your mind, practice turning off the noise in your mind, and then using that at times when you're stressed. Like I can remember even times where I'd be at church. It's time to, the preacher's praying, and all I'm doing is saying, after church, I need to go here, and then I need to do this, and I find myself talking about all the list of things that needed to be done, and to take that away and say, stop, that's not good. That's been a learned skill, a very powerful learned skill. Recently I hadn't used my MUSE in months, but as I tackle trying to write a book, again, the stress of, can I get all this organized? Can I find this place? Is it going to connect with the reader? Is it going to turn out okay? The worries can take over. And I found that I needed to practice putting the monkey back in the parts of my brain that he doesn't bother me, and that I can focus. And as I get into my writing schedule, using this before I write to put away the noise has just become a really good habit. So I would like you to click on the show notes below to see some of those stories we talked about. You'll find the actual protocol that I have said, if you want your doctor to do this, there's evidence-based articles that say here's where the data comes from to reset a brain that has addiction, or reset a brain that has struggled with sleep, or is coming off of pain meds, or coming off of alcohol. And it's a powerful protocol. I learned it from my mentors, and I've probably done it to 4,000 patients at least over the 20 years. It is an amazing protocol that's used to reset sleep. And again, the drug is not addicting, but it is a heavy medication that you need a doctor helping you with. So I don't recommend that to most people. Don't need that. They do need a tool that gives them feedback. So if you do want to look into this more, I do have something in the show notes for you there on that as well. And again, this wasn't as focused on the ketogenic diet. There were a few updates at the beginning, but I really want the message to be that we're trying to empower patients to heal thyself, just like the doctor's supposed to, right? But really, information is so much easier today than it was even 10 years ago, that if I can teach 10,000 people, 20,000 people by watching this video some of the tricks to slow down your brain, heal that system, and then you get the advantage of doing that while on a ketogenic diet, your brain will never be the same. It is incredible how quickly I can see my patients really take medications away, improve chronic health problems that they thought they'd take to the grave. And boy, that's, if nothing else, super empowering. So I just want to say thank you for all of those tuning in. Once again, the way this channel is supported is if you haven't read my favorite teaching tool, it is the book I wrote about my mom, Any Way You Can. She is about to celebrate another birthday, and tomorrow we actually go to check on her with her oncology doctor. She's been off of chemo for several months, and we are going to go see how her numbers are. So say a prayer for Grandma Rose, and happy musing with your muse. I'm signing off. Dr. Boz, improving your health one ketone at a time.
Please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.